Hi, Copic and the Craft Room fans. I have a special card that I am making today for a friend who is in a very important countdown. And so I'm doing this little kind of card that has an insert that has a countdown that she can check off days on. The image I'm using is from Stamp AnnieThing. It's this really cute Celebrate image that came out this past July. Now this one you're going to notice right away has something already on the image. I'd done some freckles to test out where I wanted to put some freckles on this girl's face when I colored her before. But I don't want to waste, I have this stamped image, it's ready to go. I didn't necessarily want to waste it, and I know that I can soften that because I don't particularly like where the freckles are currently. I like them out on the cheeks, but not in the center of the face. So I'm starting with my E50 on the skin, and this is going to go really fast because the video itself ended up quite long. And I go over this pretty heavily with the E50. Her legs and arms get the same base treatment, and I go back over the face 2 to 3 times. That's going to push those freckles kind of to the back of the page. It's not erasing it, but it's pushing that ink since it's a lighter color. E01 is next. I'm coming in from the sides, the top, and underneath the arms, kind of the inside of the legs, kind of a central lighting. I've added the nose like I usually do on this image, just a real faint shading. The E21 is next, deepening, kind of creating more shape there, and then a little bit of E93 on the cheeks for just a touch of blush, and going back all the way to the E50 to soften some of those edges. I didn't need to go back through all my colors this time, even though this is like hyper fast. I did work fairly quickly in real time too. So E21 is going to be the base color of her hair, and again, a lot of times I actually base the entire head of hair versus leaving a white highlight. Now this is one of the colors I left on the skin or used on the skin, and so you're going to see a lot of similarity here right at the start, but it's going to change here pretty dramatically as I get going. E23 is next, and I'm just going to walk kind of through the E2s. I'm using the very tip of my brush nib, and I'm flicking from the top down and then from the bottom edges up. Gets a little trickier around that sparkler and her arms, just to kind of keep those little flicks going. Now, the chunk of hair that's falling behind her, so behind her shoulders, behind her arms, behind her neck, that area is going to get completely darker. So I actually went through and based that entire area with that E23. E25 is next, just fewer flicks. You'll notice some of these are still long. They're going up into that highlight area. On that darker area falling behind her, those flicks now come into play. So it doesn't happen until this E25 though. We've got some long flicks coming from the top down, from the bottom up on those side pieces. And then E27 is next. Again, fewer flicks. So it's not the length that changes on hair for me. It's actually the number of flicks that are happening. So it just is fewer of them. As I get into those darker colors, I just slow down a little bit, kind of place them more cautiously. I'm doing a tiny bit of softening with that E21, the lightest color, coming back with E04 and E93 on her tongue. Around one of the eyes, I'm using a little bit of Colorless Blender. I let it sit and push the color, come back a second time. If I need to, I could come back a third or a fourth. R43 is going to start her dress and her headband and little shoes. Notice I've left a lot of white. Now I'm coming in with R46, filling in more of that area, remembering where my highlight is, which is coming kind of down center front. The way this little skirt pushes out and back down, kind of bells out or poofs out, I want to create that highlight kind of running across the middle where it's catching as it curves up and over. There's a lot of different ways you can do skirts, and this is just a different one for me. I've run through the R56, and now the R59 is my finishing color. I'm going back and blending a little bit with the R46, so I skipped the R56, and then finishing that blending with the R43. It takes a little bit more work. You'll see me circle on each of those areas a little bit more, but it softens that pretty nicely and gives that brighter highlight to it. Sorry about the lighting change. It got dark here and I had to switch over to something else. But I'm going to use a pencil and create a kind of horizon line or floor line. Doing a little correcting with E50. And then I'm using a ruler. I draw a dot at the top of my page and then I'm kind of fanning out from that dot using my ruler. And now I'm not doing regular intervals. There's some thick and some thin. A couple of people asked me about how to do this wood floor that I done last week, and so I wanted to show you. Very, very light pencil. E21 is going to fill that in. Now, if you don't want pencil stains on your markers, you need to erase that pencil almost completely gone so that you can barely see it, but I just don't care. It doesn't affect personally, it doesn't affect the ink flow. It doesn't affect the color of my ink. It might stain my nibs. But that just doesn't bother me. And you won't see that staining except on very light markers. Like on the E21, you probably wouldn't see it at all. So I can barely see the pencil lines now, but now I'm going to use those as reference to create what looks like wood flooring. So this is my E35. I jumped from E31 to E35. I think I said that right. The base was E31 and this is E35. I'm just doing these wiggly lines that run along the same path as the lines that I created with my pencil, those planks. Some of those I've made a little more solid, kind of where there's a break in between planks. I'm trying to go at the top edge and kind of reinforce some of those little spots, add one knot into the wood. That's for my friend Anne. She likes to have a knot in there. And then I'm adding that shadow with that same color, that E35, so a little cast shadow underneath her. I'm not trying to get real specific to her shape. And then I've got an E27. So this is a much darker one. And now you can see where those wood planks are. I'm really going up from the top and coming right down those creases where one board meets the other. If these aren't exactly where they were with my pencil lines, that's okay. No one else can see that at this point. Most of that is completely covered up. I go to the core of the cast shadow, add a little bit of that E27, and then I soften with the E35, and I do a tiny bit of softening at the edge with the E31. I don't want to blend that all together. And then the sky, I've got a B000, and I'm doing this super fast because, again, this video ran closer to 50 minutes to an hour, and I knew I wasn't going to be able to show it all to you guys. But really just doing those circles, getting a nice coat, and then I come back in with a B00 and darken up around the edges just to give it a little bit of shading from light to dark. Then I'm going to start cutting. I'm going to zoom out and I'm going to cut this little guy down. I don't need it really big because I have this little counter card that I printed out with the numbers 1 through 45. And then I'm going to make this little envelope. And I am not a master at this, so I'm keeping this fast because you guys don't want to see me fumbling around. So the envelope itself is about 3.5 by 4, and then I made a little piece that could fold in the bottom, kind of close off the bottom, and then I'm cutting out my little countdown card. It's going to go inside. So I've got kind of a flap at the bottom and then a flap to create that pull out. This little card goes on the front, and then I try to punch through, but of course my punch doesn't go through all those layers because in some places it's like 4 layers of cardstock. So I'm cutting out that and sliding my card in. And now I'm going to write a little pull on that little spot, and I'll go over that with ink. In a second you're going to see the finalized card, but this is for a very good friend of mine who's counting down 45 days. And she's excited about the end result. So thank you, as always, for joining me here at Copic in the Craft Room. I hope you saw some techniques you might be able to transfer onto something else. If you haven't had a chance, please check out my blog at scrapweaver.com for all my up-to-date live teachings and classes. And like this YouTube channel, we always want to share this information. I want to share this information with others. Thanks for joining me this week. Have a happy, colorful week.